Question 54. What is the worst psychological torture you can imagine suffering? Anything causing even minor physical injury should not be considered. I think there's a problem with the phrasing of this question. What is the worst? Well, it doesn't matter how bad something is or how good something is. You can go in either direction. It can always be worse or better. However much pain you put me under, you can always put me under more. Imagine if it is physical pain, you could do something absolutely agonizing to this knee. Well, I could do something to that toe and that toe, and I could be doing other things. No matter how much pain you can put someone through, it's always possible to make it worse. But I'll try to answer the question anyway. Not so long ago, I went on a LARP, a live action role play, in which we were tortured, or at least some of us were. Before you volunteered for the LARP, you said whether you were up for being tortured or not. It was an SOE LARP, that is to say, it was the training school for the Special Operations Executives. So these were British spies of World War II being trained on how to endure torture by potential Gestapo captors. The thing is, though, that it was a LARP. So when they did these tortures, which were, by the way, real, actual tortures that the real SOE people would have been put through in the real training, but everyone knew it was a LARP. So if you were threatened with something that might kill you, it's easy to, or at least easier, to resist the torture by just thinking to yourself, no, wait a minute, they can't actually be threatening to kill me. So therefore, this is all a bluff. So I'll hold out. But then they were LARPing a LARP because the people, during World War II, the actual SOE agents being trained, they're not going to actually kill them during how to resist torture training. So they would have known at the time, wait a minute, I'm in training, so this is actually a bluff. They're not actually going to kill me. So I can just say, I will never crack you, you're never getting any information from me. Ha! And they could hold out. Although actually, I would say not only were we LARPing a LARP, but we were perhaps LARPing a LARP of a LARP, because even if the Gestapo did actually capture you, they're trying to get information out of you. Yes, they'll threaten you with death, but if they actually killed you, they wouldn't get any information out of you. And you know that, so you're thinking, aha, it's a bluff. All right, a little bit harder to act on that last thought than the previous two, but even so, it was sort of a LARP of a LARP of a LARP. And I don't want to put in many spoilers, but just one example. They had actual full-size World War II lorries outside the building, and we'd all seen them walking in and out from the gravel drive into the main room. Well, they would grab you, tie your hands behind your back, put a hood over your head and march you out into the fresh air. And you can hear the gravel underneath your feet. And they would then put you down on the ground and press your face into the gravel. You can now feel the gravel and hear the gravel. Yep, you're definitely outside. And then you hear vroom, 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 a lorry start up. And the lorry comes towards you very, very slowly. And its wheel comes right up to your head until the tyre is there, crushing your face against the gravel. And then, now are you going to tell us what you want to know? What we want to know? Are you? Right. And you could smell the rubber. You could smell the fumes. You could hear that the ground is shaking. It's completely real. Of course, it wasn't. The lorry actually was just missing your head, but revving like crazy and shaking the ground. And so the smell and everything, that was all there. But the thing pressing up against your head was actually the lorry's spare wheel that they were moving very carefully, copying the movements of the real lorry. There were many other tortures, but there you go. One example, one will do. So that is a threat of death. But a threat of death under very particular circumstances. You're trying to get information. And so you could say, that's not the worst. It's pretty bad, but it's not the worst. You could say that long-term torture is worse. Your whole life turning out to be a lie. You could say that modern life is a psychological torture. The way we live today is definitely not the way we have evolved to live. Around the world today, the happiest people, they're all hunter-gatherers. People who study happiness keep finding, yep, hunter-gatherers, yep. They have no, they don't have to worry about taxes and regulations and all those things. And they have a great social network. They're surrounded by their family and friends all the time. Getting food, that's going out hunting, gathering, that's a cracking day's entertainment, and they wander around in nature. And we've evolved to find wandering around in the great outdoors getting food pleasurable, because it's good for us to find that pleasurable. We do it more and we survive more. They see an awful lot of their kids, etc., etc. So they tend to be the happiest people. So you could say the whole people living apart in these little boxes made out of ticky-tacky, that's the greatest psychological torture. And it's a torture that many people don't recover from. A lot of people, mental illness is a really major modern problem. There are also, it's knowing. It's things like, I bought an answer phone a while ago, before that, if someone had rung, but I was out, I didn't know they'd rung. If I went away for a week, I might miss several calls. But when I got back, I don't know, did nobody ring me? But then I got an answer phone, and I would go away for a week and come back, and there'd be no messages. Which was, I think, worse, because now I know that no one's calling me. So knowledge was acting against me there. And I can remember throughout my life, this is before I became a YouTuber, I suppose, because my YouTube has been a sort of a success, very limited one, but a sort of a success in my life. But my career as a dance teacher never took off. I never broke into film. I never succeeded before that, but I did very nearly succeed an awful lot of the time, and I found that to be a bit torturous. And I was thinking that very nearly succeeding felt worse than never coming anywhere near succeeding. And I suspect that it is worse. If you come nowhere near succeeding, there's no point in worrying about it, is there? Oh, that's never going to happen to me. No point in bothering. But I would apply for jobs with the BBC and I'd get interviews and then not get them at the last minute for some stupid reason. Or I'd make a film and like my film Built for the Stone Age was nearly a huge success, but I called it the wrong thing. I used the wrong word, and that threw the people in the television industry out. And I just missed for one word. And so over and over again, I nearly succeeded, which felt a bit like torture. And yet, I was nearly succeeding. So that's good, really. People say, oh, yeah, well, you nearly got there. Keep going. Well, when it's happening to you, it doesn't feel so good. But we're very good at noticing the drawbacks of being ourselves. What is the worst psychological torture I can imagine suffering? Well, here's the thing. One day, I might get captured by the enemy, and they might do a bit of research into me because I know valuable stuff, and they might find this video and go, aha, that's the button we should push. Why should I arm my future enemies? I can think of a lot of pretty nasty psychological torture. I don't think any of it is particularly unusual to me. I wouldn't say that I have any particular personal buttons. That you press the usual buttons for humans. You threaten. The usual one is you threaten someone, not them directly, but you threaten someone they care for, and that's definitely a strong reason, by the way, for not having women in the armed forces and in certain dangerous roles in security and the like, because it has been shown over and over and over again that if you want all these guys to crack and tell you everything they know, just threaten the woman and they'll all crack. If there's a woman among them and you've captured her as well, threaten to torture her and the guys just fall like dominoes. It's like Yes, I don't want to talk about psychological torture, but perhaps I'll end with this point. I've had this idea that if you want to save money for a country, prison services are very expensive. It costs a lot of money to put people in a prison and keep them there for a long time. You need all the staff. You've got to build the prison. It's a very expensive process. What if we could get people to go in and out of prison a little bit faster, lower the prison population, and yet make people feel good and punished? Well, maybe you add psychological torture. So imagine you've been found guilty of some crime, and the judge says to you, right, I sentence you to either 10 years in prison or 5 years listening to French pop music in prison. Which would you take? Now, you might say, I'd take the listening to French pop music. Really? It would have to be done carefully, of course, because I think a lot of people would be driven dangerously and criminally and perhaps expensively insane by these methods if we got them wrong. But it's worth experimenting with, don't you think?